Welcome to the Intercut podcast channel, the weekly place to hear the latest on movies, TV, and entertainment that people can't cut away from. I'm your co-host, Zachary Shevich, and joining me, he doesn't think we're going to have enough hot dogs. It's Arturo Zurita.
Hey, my boy was really the grill master. The first shot that you see of him, you're like, all right, this guy's got it down pat.
Locking it down.
3 minutes into the movie, you're like, run, boy, run.
Yeah, man. He had the dad game down pat, but not sure that I like seeing that for a dude who's not much older than you and I are. But that is part for the course with this really interesting film from filmmaker Todd Haynes, who's previously made films such as Safe, Far From Home, and Carol. He's back with a juicy family drama that is dramatically compelling and disarmingly funny. May December stars Natalie Portman, Julianne Moore, and Charles Melton in a very slippery film that's hard to describe in brief, but I will do my best. Moore and Melton play a couple whose relationship began when she was a married woman with children and he was a middle schooler. However, a wave of tabloid headlines, a jail sentence, and 2 decades later, they are still together with one kid in college and a pair of twins set to leave for college soon. The film begins when Natalie Portman's character, an actress, arrives at the family's home in order to observe and research them for an upcoming film role in which she will play Julianne Moore's character at the time of the original scandal. It's a movie that happily splashes around in morally gray pools of water, rejecting simple takeaways in favor of complexity. The characters are fascinating because of the circumstances, but they're also made more fascinating by how fully realized they are in both writing and performance, which vacillates between affecting melodrama to high camp comedy. May December is one of the movies this year that I can't help but continue to think about. Arturo, are you similarly drawn into the world of May December?
It's fantastic. It is one of those movies that you come out thinking that one person has the best, easily, greatest performance of the movie, maybe even of the year. Then you start realizing that there's all these nuances to one of the other characters and how that informs one of the other people in the movie, and you just end up playing this whole back and forth hot potato of like, okay, maybe all of them. This may be the best ensemble of the year.
Yeah.
With it being so tight knit and close. I ended up adoring this movie, to the degree that you first and foremost have to come out and say, this is playing it as a comedy as well. This is a comedy drama, or more of a drama comedy, and it balances both of those well. And I know that there's been some pushback for that because of the subject matter. So right off the bat, for those people who need it, because we are not the movie, we are the review, it is not condoning this in any way, shape, or form. Some people have missed that entirely. If you don't get that, then I think you're going to really misread the movie, because it's in getting into those awkward pockets of a relationship like this that allows the movie to really explore things without it being judgmental from the point of view of the characters. And
Absolutely.
I thought it did it exquisitely well.
Yeah, so we should acknowledge that if it's not obvious from the premise, this story is heavily influenced by the real-world story of Mary Kay Letourneau, who was a 6th grade teacher that likewise began a relationship with a 12-year-old, only to have his child and get back together with him after spending some time in jail. And the script, which was written by Sammy Birch, seems to mostly use that true story as like a jumping-off point to imagine what their lives might have been like, because there are obviously many people who have gotten themselves in these like uncomfortable and rife for awkwardness situations. But this is not meant to be a biopic. The script is crackling with these uncomfortable moments and surprising revelations and unexpected humor. It's really probably one of my favorite screenplays of the year because of how it dives into these characters and, as you mentioned, treats them as like real people who have empathetic qualities and other qualities that are perhaps hateable or judgeable. These are messy people with like all sorts of interwoven backstories and issues and traumas that make explaining them in simple terms hard to do. Why I took so long to even do the whole intro is just because it's hard. It's a hard movie to summarize in just a sentence. There's so much going on here.
And without people thinking that this is just covering that as the tabloids,
Right.
they discuss, saw it as being completely scandalous. It is a movie that's also breaking down acting. She's coming from a studio that's almost like an A24 type, because there have been movies that already talked about this. She's watching tapes that look like it was like a TV version of a movie. So, I've heard some people think that it was like a porn version of it. She's going at it from the indie perspective. She's trying to discuss to the people around her what her process is to understand what a performance is. And I feel like he's almost critiquing acting. So you can go in there knowing that, yeah, there's just very heavy subject matter, but it's almost a movie making fun of the industry and what actors and actresses do just to be able to get into that mode.
Totally.
It's also the movie of someone who's able to control something, the most controlling person who has every single aspect of her life, and people who think that they're observing her only to find out that she's actually the one observing them. It's a really good screenplay that isn't just about, the act that happened. And I don't think it's covering it in a salacious way. It's like you said, crackling. It is a very good observation on not just the event, but the ripples of it and how people decide to cover something like it.
Totally. There's a very meta quality to it, not just in the fact that it's Natalie Portman coming in to play an actress who would take a prestige role like Natalie Portman and do the research, but also just because there was a, somewhat famous made-for-TV movie that is kind of schlocky and whatever about Mary Kay Letourneau, and then this is kind of, as you mentioned, the more like prestige-y way of handling that kind of story. So it is both kind of telling the story, but also telling the story of its own creation in a weird way, not like literally, but in some sort of reflexive manner that is very fascinating.
There's meta moments where, she's watching stuff on the TV in terms of her being in a commercial, and I thought it was a L'Oreal ad, and I'm like, wait, no, she wasn't L'Oreal. She was in a different one. I forget what it is.
Yeah, no, but she's doing the kinds of makeup commercials that Natalie Portman has always done. Yeah,
but then I felt like it got deeper because the L'Oreal commercial I thought they were mimicking is actually not what she's in. She's not a Neutrogena. I forget whatever brand she's in. She got sued by L'Oreal for that campaign. So I'm like, wait, is she being meta and petty in the movie? Let's go. They say it's a catty movie. That's part of the marketing. I just didn't realize how deep it got into it.
Yeah. And I want to talk more about that idea of acting and Hollywood and their take on real life scandals like this when we get into some spoilers. But I do want to talk to you now a little bit more about what you think about the way the film depicts the relationship between Julianne Moore and Charles Melton's characters, because I thought it was really interesting that they seem to kind of make it clear like that there is like a real love there, but it is a love that was built on top of manipulation and trauma. And it's when they it's when they really start to like uncover the different layers to it. Because they're not just these, people who had this moment. They're people who've built a whole life together around their kids and neighbors and friends, and they way they go about their business and who they will and won't interact with in their community. They've created this sort of insulated bubble where they can attempt some version of normalcy, right?
Yeah.
And a pretty cushy bubble. And they try to be normal, but like the real world keeps interjecting or sending them packages of dog shit.
Yeah. I have a theory on that too. I thought that they handled it impeccably because, again, it's one of those movies where a lot of people will look at it and be like, I don't know, it seems like it's defending her the whole time. And I'm like, no, it's showing you what a manipulative character would be like. And if you're falling for it, that's not a judgment on the movie. That is just you praising the movie to a degree that you even fell for it too. You thought they were justifying it at some point. And we're in that era right now. Like, I can name so many movies just of this year that are about these relationships where people don't want to see them as love because they're messy and there's trauma and there's clearly abuse there. And, we're not here to talk about the state of relationships in the world, but you've seen it from Killers of the Flower Moon, right? This pushback of like, that's not love in a relationship. How could they depict that? But that is the story that Molly went through. And that is a woman, a real life woman on record who went and said, yes, I did love that man. It is messy. In fiction, it's really interesting to see people really gravitate towards a fictional take in the most recent massive installment to The Hunger Games. Another one that has a relationship where they love each other, but not really. And because it's fictional and it's YA, people can be like, yeah, that's such a messy relationship. But what happens if you stay there? This is dealing with some really,
thorny
it's way
stuff.
more sketchy. Exactly. But it's the exact same thing. What happens when you're in a relationship when one person is the one who's steering it, manipulating it, and is taking full control? But even more than that, the movie puts you so into it that it's not just the child, her husband, that's falling for it. It's everybody else around them.
Yeah.
Including the person there to observe.
Yeah, they do this really interesting thing where they kind of depict Julianne Moore in this sort of state of youthful arrested development. Like she is a grown woman who really treats herself like she's a little girl in a lot of this movie. And she sees herself that way. So it sort of ends up being this film that illustrates the ways in which we kind of create our own image of ourselves, right? And that image of yourself,
reality, easily.
Yeah, that image of yourself affects how you navigate the world. Like if you see yourself one way, you don't see power dynamics the way that they might really be, or you don't see any kind of relationship for the same way that other people see it if you have this false projection of yourself. And the movie is also empathetic and curious enough to try and diagnose some of her personal failings without but I think it's also, I think it would be a mistake to think of it as an excuse. It's more just an explanation, right?
When we get into spoilers, have a comment on that for sure. But like you said, she is definitely controlling things. That there's a line she says where she's like, "Oh, I'm secure." It's everybody else. It's insecure people who are very dangerous.
Yeah.
And I thought that Natalie was a standout in the movie, and I come home and I'm transferring my notes and I go, Why would I doubt why would I doubt Julianne Moore in a movie with a director who, when they get together, it's a well-oiled machine at this point?
Absolutely.
She kills it.
Yeah. I also thought the fact that Charles Melton obviously is not white, and that's another thing that they're taking from the original Mary Kay Letourneau story, but I think that's also so integral to how this film is portraying this situation. Yeah, it's just adds to all the fascinating elements of it.
How you would be a predator?
You alluded to it before, but like, do you have a favorite performance in this film? Is it kind of just all three of them?
Again, when I start praising somebody's performance over here, I start attributing that to like the other scene where they got that from. There's a lot of moments where when she's observing her, she's mimicking her. They'll go to the girls where she's trying on the clothes for the graduation, and she's putting on different things, and she just notices, because of the mirrors that are there, that she can start sitting like her a little bit and laugh like she does and do all these different things. And I thought Natalie did a really good job at impersonating her and trying to mimic her and trying to understand her. But then when you rewatch it back and you realize, oh no, she's just setting you up to kind of like be the look that she wants you to be, I thought that was very clever. There's a moment, and they released a scene where she's giving her speech, her monologue, that's based off of a letter, and she's doing it with like a really big lisp, right?
Yeah.
And she's overplaying the lisp. And I'm like, wait, did Julianne Moore had a lisp this whole movie too? And then you see what a fine-tuned performance for a movie would be, where if she's doing a take where she's overdoing the lisp, May December would be the fantastic movie where she's downplaying it so much, and I'm like, do you understand the layers to that?
Yeah,
it's so good.
She's showing the performance of it, right?
And my goodness,
because she's playing an actor who is playing a character who's doing it's so well tuned and
unreal.
Perfectly. You need like really capable actors to do this, and I think like Natalie Portman gets to do a lot of really interesting things, but I think Julianne Moore is really kind of like the thing that sort of clicks a lot of things into place. Yeah. And you mentioned that lisp, like she has this sort of soft upper palate. They were talking about this during one of the Q&As I was listening to, and it just sort of like imbues her character with this really weird energy. They talk about her being naive or not being naive, and that to hear her say it with this like childlike lisp too, it's so
you're telling me
funny.
Too, she could be faking that also, bro.
Yeah. Oh man.
Wow.
It's really, really cool. I was surprised to see, at least according to Gold Derby, that Julianne Moore is not in the top 5 for supporting actress right now, because she's, certainly one of my favorite performances
They're not
of the year.
co-leads? She begins the movie, she ends the movie.
You could argue that, but I think that in order to not have them compete, they're putting Julianne in supporting.
Okay.
Yeah, but outside of
All
Divine
right.
Joy Randolph, I'm not sure there's a supporting actress performance that I liked more this year. I mean, Emily Blunt's up there, but I thought this was excellent.
Wait, who else do they have if Julianne Moore is not in the top 5?
They have 2 Color Purple performances, I think. Danielle
That's right.
Brooks.
That is finally getting buzz. Yeah, I've
Yeah,
been
we
hearing-
haven't seen that yet,
We'll
but
be seeing that, I think, next week.
yeah. Natalie Portman in lead is a lot harder to break the top 5, though, with Emma Stone, Lily Gladstone, Carey Mulligan in Maestro, which we'll be talking about soon, Sandra Hüller in Anatomy of a Fall, Margot Robbie, Fantasia Barrino, Annette Bening, Greta Lee. A stacked year for
Annette
lead
Bening
actress.
for Naiad?
For Naiad, yes.
Stop lying like Naiad, bro. Get that out of here. They're going to have to make it 10. They're going to have to make it 10.
There's no other solution. I also am worried about our boy Charles Melton, who might end up stealing this movie, because between your boy Mark Ruffalo in Poor Things, Robert Downey Jr. in Oppenheimer, Ryan Gosling in
Lots.
Barbie, Robert De Niro in Killers of the Flower Moon, that's 4 that I think are locked. And then it's Charles Willem Dafoe, Coleman Domingo, Dominic Sessa, and Sterling K. Brown.
What movies? Willem Dafoe in
Poor Things.
Poor Things. Okay. Coleman Domingo in
Color Purple, Dominic Sessa is from Holdovers, and then Sterling K. Brown would be from American Fiction.
Dominic Sessa. Out of here. Sterling K. Brown was good. Coleman Domingo. I
Haven't seen it yet.
really over Rustin, I guess. Yeah. No. Charles Melton over overall all of these, including Willem Dafoe. Easily.
See, but is
Easily.
this category fraud? Because I think you could argue Charles also should be a lead in this movie.
Yeah, but if they're not putting what's his name,
Julianne?
it should be even less. Yeah.
Yeah. Is May December a contender for your personal top 10 of the year?
Oh, 100%. I gave it such a high rating because I don't think that I'm going to find a better ensemble of actors playing off of each other in such an impeccable script like this. Like, it's a 4.5 movie, but don't get it wrong. Like, I'm not going to be like, hey, Saturday Night with the Boys, let's throw on May December. It's not that type of movie.
Yeah.
It's an impeccably made, like, it's so well crafted film about the reactions that people have to each other when they think they're observing something for the betterment of telling a story or being able to be honest or true, and not realizing that in that honesty lies so many lies. You know, you have Natalie Portman seeking out to embody this while lying to the people around her to get what she needs, right? The way that she also, to a degree, abuses Charles' character in order
Yeah.
to be able to get the information that
I
she
want
wants.
to talk about that.
There's a conversation when she goes to visit the school where she's telling the kids about acting, and I love how it's played off because the kid tries to be all snarky, tells them about the sex scenes. The way she breaks down sex scenes, it ruined the kid's whole perspective of what he's seeing when he's getting turned on from whatever,
Yeah.
moments that he's paused on screen. But the way that she describes that, at first, also makes fun of A24. We're in these very indie sets, very few people. You see the indie set at the end of the movie, and it's just a crap ton of crew, all men. But she's describing how at a certain point you just have to go with these types of scenes. You are just so into it that you're acting, you're playing. Do I like them? Okay, I'm fully in there. And then you keep going through this movie, and you see her go through the auditions of these kids, and you get this meta-ness of
man.
like you were also young when they were going through you. And you have this lady literally go, I don't know about these kids that we have here. They're cute, but they don't have the sexiness label. And as disgusting as that is, I'm hearing her from her early days doing what? Leon the Professional?
Yep.
Probably be auditioned and having to hear that from people.
Yeah,
And then it leads
absolutely.
to this idea of like if she describes sex scenes with adults as being like at a certain point, you're in that moment. What are you filming here? You're filming a movie where you're saying that when you film that scene with the I forget the character's name,
Talent,
but who Charles plays, who would be when he's younger. I don't know. He's almost like critiquing acting. He's almost talking about like you need to be in a sick place to embody these things.
All right, we'll
it's saying a
get
lot.
a little more into that in a second. I will mention, I think May December, when credits rolled, I wasn't sure if it's something that's going to be in my top 10 of the year. But as I mentioned at the top, I just can't stop thinking about this movie. There's just so much to pull apart and dig into, and so many scenes that I think about and just think like how funny or specific and weird it all is. So it's a movie that's growing, and like I think it's going to put it in my top 10 of the year, but it's also one of those movies that I wouldn't be surprised 5 years from now. People are like, how did people not say that this was the best of the year? How did
100%.
people not nominate this for
'cause it's
5
on
Oscars,
Netflix,
10
Zach.
Right.
It's a Netflix movie.
And Netflix is in real movies, right? Because they're not in theaters. I don't know.
I think that's another reason why I went at A24. because I think people confuse that as like those movies would sink if it didn't have that label with it.
Yeah. So before we dive into spoilers, just a quick reminder that if you're enjoying this review on YouTube, like the video, leave us a comment, maybe subscribe to our channel. If you're listening to this podcast, you can subscribe on Apple, Spotify, whatever you use, and you can also leave us a 5-star review there too. Support the show for as little as $1 a month by becoming a member of our Patreon at patreon.com/intercutpod to help ensure we can keep doing reviews, deep dives, movie brackets, film festival
Appreciate
coverage, and our best movies of the year. Shout out to our awesome patrons who for their support on the show so far. All right, let's talk about spoilers. That's your spoiler warning, because this film starts to get messier when it begins to unpack that Natalie Portman character, because it's obvious from the start that Moore and Melton have issues given the history of that relationship. But the lengths to which Natalie Portman's character goes to insert herself into their lives is parasitic. And it feels like this film's way of articulating what Hollywood entertainment about real people Hollywood entertainment about real people does to the lives of real people, right? Like she is able to use she's able to start seducing Charles Melton's character. And she starts using that seduction as a way of gauging whether or not she's properly embodied her own character. And once he's fallen in love with her, she knows she's ready to make the film, so she leaves. She's done with them. She doesn't need the town. She doesn't need those people. And she's come in, blown up their lives, and left the way that I'm sure a lot of people feel. A lot
of actors do.
And a lot of productions do, too, to regular people.
To regular people, to regular towns. He has a killer line when he says that this isn't a story, it's my life.
Exactly, yeah. But to her, it's a story. It begins and ends with her involvement in this film role.
No, yeah. I thought that part of it was fascinating, because you really do see like all the ins and outs of her. You know, she's talking to the director and already flirting with him because the director's spouse isn't going to be there for when they're filming, so they have a lot of time alone. She has this nasty line where she's like, I need more time. I'm almost about to crack it. And he goes, no, because we're running over budget. And do you remember she says, well, just tell the crew they're not going to get sweaters. They can get mugs, cut the budget.
Yeah, she's so narcissistic and so manipulative too. But like you don't like see that at first through, because she's just sort of like it's her process or whatever, right? And
it's a process. Yes, I just didn't know everything.
I thought it was so good. And Portman just kind of does it very fearlessly, like without a hint of like shame in her character. Yeah. Ultimately, what feels like it's going to be this heavyweight bout between two of our living best actresses, though, gets upended, as we mentioned, by an incredible Charles Melton performance as his character begins to finally unpack what's happened to him. Because he's 36 years old, but is becoming an empty nester. His life has, in some ways, only just begun, and in other ways, it feels like he's ending. And I just thought that was such a like profound exploration of this character who can't help but feel conflicted, right? Like he's peers with people who are 2 decades his senior, and he's seeing like the last vestiges of his youth slip away. As a dude in my 30s, I can attest that you really start to feel youth slip away from you. And I don't know, I just was really moved by his whole journey, you know, like I thought it was fascinating, that scene where he goes up onto the roof and smokes weed for the first time with his son,
with his kid. Yeah. And to parallel that, earlier on, they talk about how he had to like help raise his sisters because his mom wasn't there. Father was always working. And when he goes to go chill with his dad, he takes the cigarette and like hits it. So that, like, even his dad looks at him like, you have never grown up. You don't know how to smoke cigarettes.
Yeah.
They even cut to all those cigarettes that the dad has smoked. He goes, like, you are still a child. Like, you are about to have 2 kids graduate. You already have one in college. You never grew up, my boy. And, yeah, no, it's fascinating. The roof scene also has one of my favorite lines when he almost falls. Because he does x-rays for a living. And he's like, imagine if I had to do my own x-rays. He's good, dude. People downplay really this man, and they're embarrassing themselves online by going, what a revelation.
I mean, I wasn't watching CW shows, man. I didn't know shit about him.
He's been in other movies. He's been in these tiny roles. I liked him in the the Sun is Always a Star one. It was a movie that looked impeccable. It came out during the pandemic though, so like people toss it to the side. But it's like he just hasn't had the opportunity to have a role like this, right?
Absolutely.
But the performance would have always still been there. And I think that's what people forget is that you have a lot of these actors who come from these shows. Jacob Elordi was dismissed because of Kissing Booth, right? Look how we're talking about The Boy as well. So I think he's just going down that path. So it's an incredible script that was given to him, and he killed it, especially in that sequence when he's just acting like a child. After he gets played by Natalie Portman, who takes him home to be able to, just like his sister has asthma, I have asthma too, and I need help with my nebulizer. Slick. She's so clever. The moment she gets something, she pounces on it. Baits him. They come in. My man lasted like 3 seconds, but it allows her to do that sick thing. It allows her to do that thing where she's able to read the letter right after the act, just to be in that headspace. And that leads to him coming home because he's kind of, after all of their talks, all of their walks, in his mind, he's always said, nah, this is me. This is a love. Don't people understand that if we lasted this long, it must mean something? At this point, they said she was 36 also. So they're the same age.
Yeah.
But he's also now the same age at 36 years old that she was when she abused him. So he's seeing at that point how undeveloped he is, with kids who would have been almost twice his age leaving to school, and how sick the scenario actually was. But he's never able to confront her because there's a moment when he was walking with Natalie Portman on the beach trying to defend, I don't see why people don't just leave us alone. And he comes home to hear her crying. And he already knows this lady yells at him for the amount of beers. She counts his beers. When they're talking outside, the lights go on in the bedroom because he needs to be inside. And he walks up there in that one moment because this lady's crying that an order got canceled. And I thought because, they're done with her. They found out they don't want to be associated with her. It's because the neighbor has to go for an emergency because her sibling is like dying.
But she can't even consider that. She's just thinking about it selfishly. Yeah.
She's having a breakdown, and just him entering going, I have to deal with this again. You see who's in control there. She throws tantrums to always keep him in line. So when he's finally in that last bedroom scene with her. Oh, I forgot another one. Go wash yourself. You smell like smoke. Such an awkward scene. But it leads to that bedroom scene where he's like, dude, he killed that performance. He is shaking. He is trembling. He's not talking to his spouse. He's talking to a parent. He's trying to tell her if it's okay that we can maybe do something. But he doesn't want to say the word. He wants to divorce her, and he's wondering, now that we don't have to worry about the kids, am I allowed to do this?
He's forced to somehow...
Like a fiddle.
He's forced to somehow be the more mature person while still being the traumatized child simultaneously.
Insane.
And like navigating that in terms of performance is really, really incredible work. And I think, for a movie to set its characters up in a way where you can get scenes like that is really special. And that's why it's so wonderful that they are jumping into these kind of to perhaps uncomfortable waters, because you get these moments of just incredibly profound revelations or realizations or incredible scenes. And it's just the way that the journey you go on through with these characters is really, really incredible. It's also just as you're alluding to, an incredible illustration of how non-physical abuse works in abusive relationships.
It's physical, but I agree with you. Yeah, not a violent way, but in a mental way.
Exactly. The manipulative qualities of those types of relationships.
Mm-hmm. It also he has my favorite scene in the movie. At the end, there's this through line where he's been texting a Facebook group friend because they both like butterflies.
The butterfly group, yeah.
They met at a pet shop. She's the one who hired him at a pet shop. She also took advantage of a freaking hobby that he had. He loves these animals. That's why he was there, only to get seduced in the stock room all the way in the back. He is growing these monarch eggs because he really wants to take care of them because they can't take care of themselves. And he's texting this other person who he can actually have a relationship with through text that kind of goes by the wayside when he kind of wants to meet up to go to an exhibit, something that, his wife never wants to do. But my favorite scene in the movie is after he teaches Natalie Portman's character, how to take care of these and that they're eventually going to hatch. Once he's had that conversation on graduation day, one of them hatches and he butterfrees it. He lets that thing go. It spreads its wings and leaves. And then his daughter comes down in her gown for graduation, who he's going to have to let go as well.
Yeah.
And then he's also like going over himself. It's a lock. It's a lock. Number 5, supporting performance. Number 5, easily. Easily.
He better get in there. I would be pretty devastated if he doesn't. And this
beautiful.
movie in general, like, I just hope it's not too quiet, not too weird, not too Netflixy or whatever it is to be overlooked in the end of year race. Because it's pretty incredible. It'll be on Netflix by the time we post this video, or at least the day after we post this video. So hopefully you get a chance to catch up with it as well and let us know your thoughts. Any final things you want to share about May December? Is this your new favorite Todd Haynes movie?
It's
for me,
way
it
up
is
there
right
for
now.
sure.
Yeah,
it's pretty high up there because let me make it a little better for you. I think that what's her name was manipulating the entire situation. That I think she timed the package at the beginning to be sent. They hadn't gotten one in a while. She wanted to make sure that package came in.
There you
so
go.
So that she saw it. That
Natalie
package
Portman
was already out there. People were coming to visit.
Natalie Portman sent the dog shit.
No.
Oh, she brought it?
Julianne
Moore sent the dog shit. Okay, I see that.
The entire time she's not being observed. She knows they're making a movie for her. She's manipulating the actress to play her the way she wants to be seen.
True. Even though she says like, "Oh, the movie happens between 92 and 99. Why do you need to know anything after that?" But she still is bringing her in. Know
that stuff.
Still bringing her in. Yeah.
There's a moment in the dinner scene later on where she says, did you get her a scale? What the daughter goes, did you get her a scale? Like, you got me a scale? And she goes, everybody gets that. And before moving on, because Natalie Portman's sitting there, she retracts her story to be like, well, my mother gave me a scale too. I think that's a lie. I think she's trying to excuse herself. When she gets the big reveal of what you were saying, that it's not an excuse, but you kind of understand why she maybe is the way she is. She had another son, an older son, who had to deal with this whole fallout of his mom when he was in middle school.
We barely touched on the older son character, who's also fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah, and it kind of ruined his life completely because it happened like, what, days before his birthday?
And he was in the same grade?
Yeah, crazy stuff. He reportedly saw her diary that said that she was abused by her brothers. Mm-hmm. Brothers who she has a good relationship with because they play for the Twins, remember? They're on the pitching staff. Then at the end, it turns out, I know he told you that, but, it's not whatever he says. We talk every day. Mm-hmm. I think she manipulated her son into thinking that was the reason why his mom did what she did. That may not even be a thing that happened.
It's
I think
possible.
all of that is there. I think it's more than possible. I think she's manipulating the whole thing because there is no excuse for who she is. She is just a monster. And that's why Julianne Moore killed the performance, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, I take that scene a different way, but like it's, that's part of what is there. Like it's all the sort of unclear nature of these characters lets you kind of interpret and view like their actions in all these different lenses, and it speaks to how strong the movie really is.
Yeah, I mean that's why at the end when they're at the graduation, she tells her about the "I'm very secure. I know how it goes." She shakes her up at the end because she realizes everything that you've been telling me hasn't been truth. You've been manipulating me just like you've been manipulating the kid the entire time. Impeccable performance.
Yeah. All right, well, I think that's about all for our review of May December, but you can catch more from me by following me on Twitter, Instagram, or Letterboxd at Zshevich, that's Z-S-H-E-V as in victim, I-C-H, and check out my YouTube or TikTok channels at Multiplex Show. Art, where can people find more from you?
You can find me over at LME Movies on all social medias, Letterboxd, over here on YouTube.com at Let Me Explain, where we've been doing a bunch of breakdowns. I definitely, when this movie comes out, want to break it down even more. It's produced by Will Ferrell, bro. Like, for people saying, I don't say it's a comedy, he did Succession. He is a really good producer if you really look at his producing credits. You had mentioned Sammy Birch. In the outline.
I totally wanted to mention
I got you.
Sammy Birch, the writer, has a crazy IMDb. I don't know if you scrolled it at all. This is her first big feature film writing credit, I believe, but she's also got a story credit on the recently in the news Coyote versus Acme movie. But if you look at her credits, it's predominantly as a casting director. She's got over 50 direct credits in casting.
I told you I was just doing my Hunger Games video. I was wondering why she looked familiar because she's the casting director who comes out in those saying, I've been waiting to cast this person until Mockingjay. I was like, she does look a little familiar. Interesting. Fascinating. Yeah. But we're breaking all these movies down every week here on the Intercut podcast.
And you can catch more episodes of the Intercut podcast on iTunes, Anchor, Spotify, whatever podcatcher you use. I like Overcast. And you can catch us on youtube.com/IntercutPod, where you can catch our satisfied faces as we break down the latest in entertainment. Find new episodes of the Intercut Weekend Must-Watch streaming on our YouTube channel every Monday. And please, leave us a comment, like the video, and consider heading over to iTunes to give us the much requested 5-star review. Shout out to our listeners in Denmark for putting us on the TV and film podcast charts out there. You get updates throughout the week across our social media channels at Intercut Pod. That's also where you can find our Patreon. And you can also find a link to our Discord in the description of this episode. Those are the best places to get updates throughout the week from me, from Art, from all the guests that we feature here on Intercut, particularly that Patreon where I'm now doing weekly updates about the podcast. So if you want to know what movies we're covering, what stuff is coming up, definitely hit us up on Patreon. You can even follow us for free on Patreon now. But thanks again for tuning in. And until next time, insecure people are very dangerous, aren't they?